Once upon a time, in a village surrounded by rivers and hills, there lived a girl. She was kind-hearted, yet she longed for something she believed would change her life beauty. She watched the world around her, where others were admired for their looks, and she felt invisible. Day after day, the girl wished to be noticed, to be loved. She thought, if only I were beautiful, everything would be different. The desire grew stronger in her heart. One day, she overheard whispers in the village. The women spoke of a mysterious sorcerer deep in the forest who could grant wishes. They said he could make anyone beautiful, but warned that magic always came with a price. The girl, however, was blinded by her dream. She thought, this is what I need. I will go to the sorcerer, and I will ask him to make me beautiful. Without a second thought, she set off towards the dark forest. Fear was in her heart, but her longing was stronger. She walked deeper and deeper, past trees that seemed to watch her every step. She did not stop, even when strange sounds filled the air. Her mind was fixed on one thing, to change her fate. At last, she reached a clearing, and there stood the sorcerer's home, hidden from the world. Her heart raced as she knocked at the door. It creaked open slowly, and a voice, old and wise, asked her, "What do you seek, child?" Trembling but determined, she stepped forward and said, "I wish for beauty, more than anything in the world." The sorcerer looked at her, his eyes sharp and knowing. "Are you sure you want this?" he asked. Beauty comes at a price, and it is not always what it seems. But the girl did not care about the price. "Yes," she said firmly, "I am sure. I want to be beautiful, more than anything." The sorcerer nodded. He took out a small bottle from a dark shelf. His hands moved slowly, as if the magic inside the bottle was strong and dangerous. He began to whisper strange words, words the girl could not understand. The air in the room felt heavy, and the girl could feel something changing. Then, in the blink of an eye, it was done. The girl felt different. She rushed to a small mirror in the corner of the room. Her eyes widened. She was beautiful, more beautiful than she had ever imagined. Her skin was smooth, her hair shiny, and her eyes sparkled like stars. She smiled at her reflection, feeling a new kind of happiness. This was what she had always wanted. "Remember," the sorcerer said in a low voice, "beauty is not always a blessing. Be careful of what you wish for." But the girl, too excited about her new look, didn't listen. She thanked the sorcerer quickly and ran out of the dark forest. Her heart was full of joy as she thought about how everyone in the village would now look at her, admire her, and treat her with respect. As she walked back to her village, her beauty caught the eyes of everyone she passed. The villagers stared in surprise. Some whispered, "Who is she? Where did she come from?" Others smiled at her, admiring her new face. But just as the girl reached the edge of the village, an old woman appeared in her path. The woman's back was bent, and her face was hidden under a dark hood. She leaned on a wooden stick, her hands trembling. "Where are you going, young one?" the old woman asked, her voice soft but serious. "I have just been granted great beauty," the girl said proudly. "Now, everyone will see me and admire me." The old woman shook her head slowly. "Beauty can be dangerous," she warned. "It cannot fill your heart, nor can it last forever. Be careful, child. Not everything is as it seems." But the girl didn't listen. She was too full of excitement. She thought, "The old woman does not understand. This is what I have always wanted." So she walked away without another word. As she entered the village, all eyes turned to her. People whispered, stared, and admired her beauty. The girl felt proud, believing her wish had finally made her happy. But as the sun began to set, a strange feeling crept over her. Her chest felt heavy, and her body started to feel different. She looked into a pool of water nearby. For a moment, her reflection flickered, her beautiful face seemed to change. But before she could make sense of it, the reflection returned to normal. The girl shook her head, confused but trying to forget the feeling. She was sure it was nothing. The night was falling, but she had no idea what the darkness would bring. As the night fell, crept over her. Her chest felt heavy, and her body started to feel different. She looked into a pool of water nearby. For a moment, her reflection flickered, Her beautiful face seemed to change. But before she could make sense of it, the reflection returned to normal. The girl shook her head, confused but trying to forget the feeling. She was sure it was nothing. The night was falling, but she had no idea what the darkness would bring. As the night fell, the village became quiet. The girl, proud of her beauty, walked through the streets, thinking about how her life would change. But something strange began to happen. Her body felt heavy, her skin tingled, and her hands shook. A chill ran down her spine, and she hurried to find a place to be alone. She found herself near the river, where she had often sat before, looking at her reflection in the water. But now, as she looked into the water, she did not see the beautiful face she had earlier in the day. Her reflection had changed. What she saw in the water made her gasp in fear. Her face had become twisted and ugly. Her skin, once smooth, was now rough and scaly. Her beautiful eyes were dark and wild, her hair tangled like the branches of the forest. She had turned into a monster. The girl screamed, stepping back from the water. Her heart raced as she touched her face, hoping the reflection was a trick. But it was not. She was no longer beautiful. She was no longer herself. The curse had begun. The girl ran into the forest, hiding from the village, hiding from anyone who might see her. She could not let them know what had happened. She felt ashamed, afraid that they would no longer look at her with admiration, but with fear. She sat alone in the darkness, her heart heavy with regret. For the first time, she realized that her wish for beauty had only brought her pain. She was now trapped in a curse, beautiful by day, but a monster by night. As she wept in the shadows, she wondered if she would ever be free from the curse. The girl had gotten what she wanted, but it was not what she needed. The nights were now full of fear for the girl. Each evening, as the sun set, her beauty faded, and the monstrous form took over. She hid in the forest, far from the village, ashamed of what she had become. During the day, the villagers admired her, but they did not know the secret she carried. One day, as she wandered deep into the forest, she met a young man who had seen her hiding in the woods before. He had watched her disappear every night and return only when the sun rose. His curiosity had grown, and he decided to follow her. "Why do you run away every night?" he asked, his voice gentle but full of concern. The girl froze, fear gripping her heart. She could not tell him the truth. She could not let him see her as a monster. I must be alone," she said, her voice trembling. "You wouldn't understand." But the young man was kind. He sat beside her, sensing her pain. "There is something you're hiding," he said softly. "I can see it in your eyes. Whatever it is, you do not have to carry it alone." The girl looked away, tears filling her eyes. She wanted to believe him, but how could she? How could anyone understand the curse she lived with? As the sun began to set, she felt the familiar change coming over her body. Her hands shook, her skin tingled, and her heart raced. She could feel the monster inside her beginning to take control. Desperate, she turned to run, but the young man grabbed her hand. "Please," he said, "let me help you." The girl stopped, her body trembling with fear. Slowly, she turned to face him. As the last light of the sun disappeared, the transformation began. Her face twisted, her skin roughened, and her beautiful features turned into the monstrous form she dreaded. She closed her eyes, waiting for the young man to scream, to run away from her in fear. But when she opened her eyes, he was still there, standing in front of her, his face calm and kind. "I do not fear you," he said, his voice steady. "You may look different, but I see who you truly are. This curse does not change the kindness in your heart." The girl, now in her monstrous form, stared at him in disbelief. No one had ever spoken to her like this. No one had ever seen past her appearance. For the first time, she realized that maybe, just maybe, there was more to her than beauty. Maybe her worth wasn't tied to how she looked. As the night grew darker, the young man stayed by her side, showing her the power of true kindness. And in that moment, something inside the girl began to change, not her face, but her heart. The girl, still in her monstrous form, could hardly believe what the young man had said. He did not run. He did not scream. Instead, he stayed with her, his eyes filled with kindness she had never known. It was as if he could see beyond the monster, beyond the curse, and into her heart. For the first time since the curse began, she felt something different hope. Night after night, the young man returned to the forest, sitting with her in the darkness. They talked about many things about life, about the village, and about the stars that lit up the sky. He never once mentioned her appearance, for to him, it didn't matter. In his eyes, she was more than just a face. She was a person, with thoughts, dreams, and a heart that was good and pure. The girl began to realize something she had never thought before. Beauty, true beauty, was not in her face or in her reflection. It was in her heart, in how she treated others, and in the kindness she showed. The young man had helped her see that. But the curse still remained. Every night, she would change, and every night, the monster would take her place. She longed to be free from it, to live without hiding, without fear. One evening, as the sun was setting and the transformation began again, the girl looked into the young man's eyes and asked, "Do you think I can ever be free of this curse?" The young man smiled gently. "The curse may seem strong, but I believe the strength inside you is stronger. You can break this, but only if you truly understand what it means to be beautiful." The girl's heart ached, for she knew what he meant. She had spent so long wishing to be admired for her looks, but now she understood that beauty was not something that could be wished for or granted by magic. It was something that came from within. With tears in her eyes, she whispered, "I do not need to be beautiful anymore. I just want to be myself." And as those words left her lips, something incredible happened. The air around her grew still, and the weight of the curse lifted. The roughness of her skin smoothed, the twisted features disappeared, and her monstrous form melted away. She was herself again, no magic, no curse. Just a girl with a kind heart and a new understanding of what truly mattered. The girl returned to the village, but this time she did not seek admiration or attention. She did not need the approval of others. She had found peace in knowing that true beauty was in her heart, not in her reflection. The villagers welcomed her back, but she no longer cared for their whispers or looks. She had learned the greatest lesson of all, that kindness, humility, and love were far more valuable than any outward appearance. And the young man, who had seen her for who she truly was, remained by her side. Together, they walked through the village, not as strangers, but as two people who had discovered the power of kindness and the strength to see beyond what eyes can show. And so, the girl lived in peace, no longer a prisoner of her wish for beauty. She had broken the curse with her heart, and she would never again be bound by the desire to be seen as beautiful. True beauty is not in what the eyes can see, but in what the heart can give. Kindness, love, and humility, they are the treasures that never fade, the beauty that shines forever.